If you love quiet tension, powerful dukes, and women who refuse to bend, then you are exactly where you belong. Before we begin, tell me this. If you were in her place, would you protect your pride? Or risk everything for a man like him? And while you're here, tell me where in the world you're listening from. I read every comment. Now, let the story begin. The candle was burning low. Eleanor Voss stood before the narrow mirror in her small room and did not look away from what she saw. She had spent a great deal of time across 3 years, learning how to look away. How to pass a mirror quickly. How to arrange her eyes slightly above her own reflection so that she saw the general shape of herself rather than the specific unforgiving truth. She had become skilled at this. It was one of the few skills the marriage market had given her that she had not asked for and did not want. Tonight she looked. The woman in the mirror had dark gray eyes and dark hair and a face that was neither remarkable nor plain. A face that fell, with what Eleanor had come to understand as the particular cruelty of the average, precisely in the middle. Not ugly enough to attract the sympathy that ugliness sometimes generated. Not beautiful enough to command the attention that beauty always did. Simply a face. A woman's face, 24 years old, watching itself. She had tried for 3 years. 3 full seasons. London ballrooms with their 50-candle chandeliers and their press of bodies and their smell of beeswax and ambition. Garden parties in the rain, where she had stood under inadequate shelter and smiled at things that were not amusing. Afternoon teas at the far end of long tables, where the conversation moved past her like a river moves past a stone that has been there long enough to be considered part of the landscape. She had worn pale muslin. She had pinched color into her cheeks before entering rooms. She had laughed at the right moments and asked careful questions and listened with genuine attention and never said anything too sharp, too strange, too specifically herself, because she had been told, in various ways by various people, that too much of herself was too much. She had tried to be noticed. She had tried to be liked. She had tried most desperately and most privately to be chosen. She had not been chosen. Not once. Not in any season by any man in any room. There had been Lord Ashby, twice at Lady Pemberton's garden party, 2 conversations that she had replayed in her memory with the careful attention of someone who has very little to work with and must make it last. He had married Miss Constance Fairchild 6 weeks later. Miss Constance Fairchild had gold hair and a laugh that carried from one end of any room to the other, and she never said anything of consequence. And Lord Ashby had looked at her the way men looked at things they had already decided to have. Eleanor had attended the wedding. She could not gracefully refuse. She had smiled through the ceremony and walked home in the rain rather than spend the cab fare, because cab fares had begun to matter in a way they had not when her father was alive. That had been the end of her 2nd season. The 3rd had been the season of understanding. It was not a comfortable understanding. It did not arrive with drama. It arrived the way cold arrives in autumn. Gradually, then completely, and then there was no temperature before it to remember. The understanding was this. The marriage market was not a meritocracy. It was not a search for kindness or intelligence or quiet moral courage. It was a search for spectacle, and Eleanor had never in her life been spectacular, and no amount of pale muslin or careful smiling was going to make her so. She had none of the things that mattered here. Her father was dead. A vicar, kind and bookish, gone 3 winters past. Her income was nearly exhausted. The small allowance from his estate barely covering another season's lodging and gowns and the social necessities that poverty could not be seen to prevent. Her stepmother, Mrs. Agnes Voss, had arranged the household finances with a precision that somehow always resulted in Gerald's debts being managed and Eleanor's allowance being reduced. Gerald was the half-brother. Gerald owed money to men whose patience had been expiring for 2 years. And Eleanor had tonight 1 more ball. Lady Hartwell's autumn assembly, the grandest gathering of the season's end, in the grandest townhouse on the square, with every person who mattered in a room designed to remind them of their matching. The invitation had come through Lady Margaret Sinclair, her truest friend across 3 difficult years, and she had accepted it because she had no graceful reason not to. She had planned to wear the pale gray silk. She had stood at the wardrobe with the gray silk in her hands and she had felt something shift inside her chest. Not a crack. Not a break. Something gentler and more final than either. The sound of a door closing on a room she had no further use for. She had hung the gray silk back. She had knelt before the trunk beneath her bed. The latch was stiff. It had not been opened in more than a year. When it finally yielded and she lifted the lid, the smell came first. Cedar and lavender and something older beneath both. Something she could not name but recognized immediately and deeply. The way one recognizes a voice heard in childhood. Her mother's things. Catherine Voss, née Hartley. Dead 15 years. Gone when Eleanor was 9, leaving behind fragments. The shape of her smile, the warmth of her hands on cold mornings, the particular sound of her humming while she read. And this trunk. These things that Agnes had never touched because Agnes had understood, without being told, that touching them would produce a response in Eleanor that would be inconvenient. The gown was at the bottom, wrapped in brown paper tied with a ribbon that had once been blue. Eleanor unwrapped it slowly. Deep crimson silk. The color of garnets. The color of dried roses. The color of something that had decided, somewhere in its nature, to refuse to be pale. It moved in her hands like water. Silk of a quality her current budget could not have imagined. Long sleeves. Modest neckline. Nothing scandalous in its construction. Everything scandalous in its color. Unmarried women wore white, cream, blush, pale lavender for the daring. They did not wear crimson. Crimson was for married women, for women who had already been chosen, for women who had nothing left to prove. Eleanor held the gown for a long time. Then she put it on. It fit as though it had been made for her body rather than her mother's, which meant her mother had been exactly her height, exactly her build, which she had never known, which seemed suddenly important. The silk settled against her with the ease of something that had been waiting. In the mirror, the woman looking back was unrecognizable. Not because the gown had transformed her, but because the woman wearing it had stopped performing someone else. She arranged her hair herself. She had no maid, could not afford one. Pulling it up simply, allowing 2 dark curls to fall at her temples. She put in the small pearl eardrops her mother had left her. She looked at her reflection one final time. She looked like her mother. Not pale. Not modest. Not invisible. She looked like a woman who had something to say. Agnes Voss was waiting at the foot of the stairs. Bronze satin. The expression she kept specifically for Eleanor's failures. That particular thinning of the mouth, that particular elevation of the chin. When Eleanor descended in the crimson gown, Agnes's face moved through several rapid silent calculations. "You cannot wear that," she said. "I am wearing it," Eleanor replied. "Eleanor, the color is my mother's color." Eleanor collected her wrap from the hall table. "I should like to wear it tonight." Agnes said a great deal more during the carriage ride. Eleanor sat across from her and looked out the window at the dark London streets and did not respond. Not because she could not, but because nothing Agnes said would change what she had already decided. When the footman opened the carriage door at Lady Hartwell's townhouse, Eleanor stepped out first. She did not look back. The first ball had frightened her. She had been 21, and she had entered Lady Foxworthy's ballroom with her heart beating so fast she could feel it in her hands, and she had believed, with the conviction of someone who has not yet been proven wrong, that effort and sincerity would be sufficient. That if she tried hard enough, if she listened well enough, if she laughed warmly and said nothing too sharp, the room would eventually accommodate her. The room had not accommodated her. The failure had been gradual, which made it more effective than a sudden blow would have been. A sudden blow can be recovered from. A slow erosion cannot. By the time one fully notices it, the thing being eroded is already half gone. She had stood near walls. She had positioned herself near groups of people, close enough to join conversations but not so close as to force the question of her welcome. She had watched other women, Miss Cecilia Hartwell in particular, who moved through rooms with the absolute certainty of someone who has never once considered that she might not be welcome, and she had tried to understand what those women possessed that she did not. It was not beauty alone. There were other beautiful women who did not command rooms the way Cecilia did. It was the certainty itself, the bone-deep conviction that one was worth looking at, not performed, not affected, but structural, built into the way they walked, the way they occupied space without apology. Eleanor had not had that certainty. She had tried to borrow it and found that borrowed certainty fell away at the worst possible moments, like a coat that does not fit. By the second season she had learned to be quieter, more managed. She directed conversation toward other people, asked questions, made the men she spoke with feel attended to and interesting. Several had called her a good listener. Several had then married women who did not listen at all but smiled with their whole faces. By the third season she understood the architecture of the system completely, which was worse than not understanding it. She understood that she had no fortune, no title, no connection of social use, and no compensating quality of spectacular beauty. She understood that the qualities she did possess, intelligence, honesty, genuine attention, a quiet moral steadiness she was aware of without vanity, were not qualities the market had been designed to reward. She had tried anyway. Until tonight. Tonight she had stopped trying in the old way. Not stopped caring. That would have been easier and also lesser. She had arrived at something different, a settled recklessness, a decision to spend this last evening as herself, fully and without management, and to let whatever happened happen. If this was the end of her chances, she would spend it as the woman she actually was. Whatever that cost her, it would cost her less than 3 more years of the alternative. Lady Hartwell's ballroom was exactly as it had always been. Enormous, blazing, crowded with people who mattered and people who wished to matter. 50 candles per chandelier. The heat of 200 bodies. A country dance already in progress, the figures moving with the precision of people for whom this had been learned before conscious memory. Eleanor entered with Agnes, as propriety required. Then she stopped. She did not look for a corner. She did not perform the social mapping she had performed at every ball for 3 years, identifying the least conspicuous position, planning the route to the refreshment table, calculating the distance to Lady Margaret. She simply stood at the entrance of Lady Hartwell's ballroom, in her mother's crimson gown, and let the room register her. The effect built rather than arrived. First the glances, sideways, quick, the look of social recognition encountering something it did not recognize. She had worn pale colors for 3 years. She had become, to this room, the color pale. The woman in crimson was someone new. Then the shift in register. Conversations dropping half a tone as people leaned toward their companions. She was being looked at. She did not smile. She did not arrange her expression into social eagerness. She stood still and let them look and told herself, this at minimum is a beginning. Lady Margaret Sinclair arrived at her side from somewhere inside the crush. Small, quick, married 3 years to a good baronet, which meant she had navigated this very market and survived it and now observed it with the clarity of the liberated. Eleanor. Her voice was careful. That gown. It was my mother's. I know it suits you. What concerns me is your expression. Margaret studied her. You have decided something. I have decided to stop being well-behaved, Eleanor said. I find it has not served me. A pause. Then, quietly. Good. It never suited you anyway. They found a position near the edge of the dance floor. Eleanor watched the room with eyes that were, for the first time, not scanning it for opportunity or threat but simply seeing it. It was Cecilia Hartwell who came to her first. Cecilia was 23, gold-haired, beautiful in the way that certain women are beautiful. Not merely in their features but in their absolute conviction that those features are worth attending to. She was the daughter of the hostess and had spent 3 seasons exercising the particular authority that status provided. She arrived with 2 companions arranged slightly behind her, which was the social geometry of a woman who expected to be followed. She stopped before Eleanor with the look of someone encountering an unexpected obstacle. Miss Voss. Her eyes moved across the crimson gown and back up. How very singular. Thank you, Eleanor said. I confess I almost did not recognize you. A slight pause, artfully placed. You look quite different. I am wearing my mother's gown, Eleanor said. She was a Hartley of Westmoreland. Your mother knew her well, I believe. It was a simple statement and also a reframing. The Hartleys of Westmoreland were not fashionable, but they were old, the kind of county lineage that the gentry quietly respected. Invoking it shifted the context of the crimson gown from eccentric to deliberate. and Cecilia, who was not unintelligent, recognized this immediately. She chose retreat. "How charming," she said, and moved away with her companions. Lady Margaret released a slow breath. "Where have you been for 3 years?" "Here," Eleanor said. No one looked. "They are looking now," Margaret said. She was right. Across the room, Eleanor felt the glances gathering. Not the dismissive assessment she had received for 3 years, but something more sustained. The look of a room that has noticed something it cannot yet categorize. She stood straight and let them look. Then the room changed. She felt it before she understood it. The particular charge that runs through a crowd when something significant has entered. A slight dropping of conversations. Heads turning in sequence, one after another. A wave moving from the entrance inward. Eleanor turned. Edmund Ashford, 5th Duke of Blackmoor, stood at the top of the entrance steps. 34 years old. Unmarried. Absent from every social engagement of consequence for 2 full years. His absence had been catalogued and discussed with the thoroughness that English society reserved for its most compelling mysteries. His attendance tonight was entirely unannounced, which meant it was intentional. Men like this did nothing that was not intentional. He was tall, the kind of build that was not produced by drawing rooms. His hair was very dark. His jaw was set with the controlled precision of a man who had arranged his features into neutrality and maintained it by long habit rather than active effort. He wore black evening clothes with no ornamentation whatsoever. No pin, no fob, nothing to compete with his own presence, because his presence had long since established that it required no assistance. He came down the entrance steps without hurrying. He surveyed the room the way a general surveys terrain. Calmly, thoroughly, without social performance. Not scanning for friends. Not seeking familiar faces with the relief of a man who needed them. Observing. Recording. Every unmarried woman in the room became aware of her posture. Eleanor was aware of him, as one becomes aware of weather, the particular pressure change that precedes something significant. But she did not alter her posture. She did not arrange her expression. She observed him with the same clear assessment she had been applying to everything this evening and determined, from across the room, that he was a man accustomed to being looked at by people who were hoping for something from him. She was not hoping for anything from anyone. She looked at him, honestly, without agenda, and then turned back to Lady Margaret. This was, she learned afterward, the precise moment. "He's here," Margaret breathed. "Edmund Ashford. Eleanor. He is looking at this part of the room." "He is looking at the room," Eleanor said. "That is what one does upon entering one. He is looking at you." Eleanor looked. He was. Not the fleeting cataloging glance she had received from men at other balls. This was the particular attention of a man who has seen something unexpected, and intends to understand it before he looks away. She held his gaze. She did not look down. She did not produce the modest, deflecting smile that 3 years had trained into her like a reflex. She looked back at him steadily, without apology, the way she imagined her mother had looked at men who looked at her. He held her gaze for a moment longer than convention required. Then he looked away first. "God," Margaret said softly. "Don't," Eleanor said. "He looked at you for." He looked at a woman in a red dress who did not look away first. "That is not the same as looking at me." Eleanor smoothed the front of her gown. "He is none of my concern, Meg. He is the wealthiest unmarried man in this room by a margin that is frankly embarrassing. He is a stranger. And I am not here to chase anyone tonight." She looked at her friend. "I am here to be myself. Just this once. In a room full of people, without apologizing for it." "All right," Margaret said quietly. "Then be yourself." "But Eleanor." "I know," Eleanor said. She did not say what she knew. But she knew it. He had looked back. He found her at the supper table at 9:30, a slight man of 50 or thereabouts, with careful eyes and the particular manner of a professional accustomed to delivering information that requires care in the delivery. Miss Voss. Miss Eleanor Catherine Voss, daughter of the late Reverend William Voss. She looked at him. "That is correct. Thomas Hargrove. Hargrove and Pemberton, Gray's Inn." I represent the estate of the late Mrs. Frances Hartley of Grayshill, Westmoreland. A pause. I have been attempting to reach you for some weeks, Miss Voss. If we might speak somewhere more. Say what you have come to say, Mr. Hargrove. She put down her lemonade. I am familiar with waiting. I have no wish to continue it. He looked at her for a moment. Then, Mrs. Frances Hartley died on the 23rd of September, 91 years old, and in full possession of her faculties to the last. She executed a will 3 years ago in your favor. He produced a folded document. Grayshill House and its associated estate of 400 acres passes to you, Miss Voss. Income from the estate after management amounts to approximately £1,200 per annum. The ballroom continued. The music continued. The candles burned overhead with magnificent indifference to what was happening beneath them. Eleanor stood very still. I was told, she said slowly, that Mrs. Hartley had died years ago. His expression did not change. Mrs. Hartley was very much alive until 6 weeks past. And your letters. I have sent 6 letters to your household address. Over the past 3 years. He met her eyes. Beginning when the will was first executed. She understood. She understood with a clarity that was almost physical. 6 letters. 3 years. Agnes at the hall table every morning before Eleanor came downstairs, sorting the post with the brisk efficiency of a woman who managed a household and would never be questioned about it. 6 letters. 3 seasons. She took the document from his hand and read her own name on the first line. Miss Eleanor Catherine Voss, daughter of Catherine Hartley Voss, and she breathed carefully and did not cry, because she was in Lady Hartwell's ballroom and she was not going to cry. Mr. Hargrove, she said, will you remain in the room this evening? Of course. I may need you shortly. In front of witnesses. She folded the document. Can I rely on you for that? A brief pause. Then, with something approaching approval, you may, Miss Voss. She put the document away and finished her lemonade and stood for a moment among the noise and brightness and let the full weight of it settle. 3 years of believing herself nearly destitute. 3 years of pale muslin and careful smiling and the low, persistent fear of running out of time and options and men who might overlook her modest means. 3 years of the marriage market as survival rather than choice. She had been an heiress. She had not known. Someone had ensured she had not known. She put it away. There was more evening ahead, and she was going to need everything she had for it. She saw him first speaking to Agnes. This was the thing that stopped her. Not the man himself, who was unremarkable at a distance, but the sight of him with her stepmother. Agnes was not easy to surprise. Agnes did not lean toward strangers. Yet here she was, leaning very slightly toward this particular man, her fan lowered, her expression doing something it almost never did in public. Listening. Genuinely, intently listening. He said something. Agnes nodded. Not the vague social nod of acknowledgement, the nod of a woman receiving information she has been waiting for. Eleanor watched this from across the room and felt the fine hairs on the back of her neck stir. Then he turned. Fair hair going gray. A face that had once been handsome in a prosperous, unremarkable way and had since been complicated by something she could not immediately name. Something slightly too arranged about the expression. The smile of a man who has decided to smile rather than a man who finds himself doing so. He was looking at her. Not the way the Duke had looked at her. Directly, with specific and undisguised attention. This was different. This was the watching of a man who would prefer not to be seen watching. Patient. Calculating. The look of someone who has been studying a situation from a careful distance for considerably longer than anyone realized. He moved toward her. Miss Voss. His voice was pleasant. Everything about him was pleasant. Very deliberately arranged to be so. Forgive the intrusion. We have not been introduced. Oliver Hartley, a distant relation of the late Mrs. Frances Hartley. God rest her. He paused as though the name required a moment of respect that he had rehearsed rather than felt. I understand you received some news this evening. She went still. I beg your pardon. I know Mr. Hargrove in a professional capacity. He mentioned his intention to speak with you tonight, regarding Gray's Hill. The smile remained fixed. I understand Mrs. Hartley left you the property. A generous gesture. It was her wish, Eleanor said. Of course it was. He looked at her with warmth that lived only on the surface of him, no deeper. I mention it only because there is a matter still before the courts. A question of prior claim. Nothing alarming. These things take time, as you will come to understand. A small pause. I merely wanted you to be aware before you made any. Another pause precisely placed. Significant decisions that the matter is not yet settled. She looked at him. She thought of Agnes leaning forward with that particular quality of attention. She thought of the document in her pocket. She thought of the Duke's words by the window. Mr. Hartley, she said, I would prefer to discuss anything of legal consequence with my solicitor present. I am certain you understand. Something shifted in his expression. Almost indiscernible. But she was looking for it. Of course. I meant no imposition. A friendly word from family, however distant. He paused. We are family after all. In a very distant manner, Eleanor said pleasantly. Good evening, Mr. Hartley. He bowed. He withdrew. She watched him cross the room, and then she watched where he went. He did not return to Agnes. He went instead toward the far wall, where he found a position with his back to the plasterwork and his eyes on the room. He stood there with the stillness of a man who had done a great deal of waiting in his life and had developed, through long practice, the ability to look like part of the furniture while he did it. She had seen that stillness before, she realized. In entirely the wrong kind of man. She filed it all away. His name. His manner. Agnes's nod. The particular quality of his patience. There was a great deal more yet to come, and she intended to be ready for it. Cecilia Hartwell came back at 10 o'clock, and she came with more force than before. For women this time, a small regiment moving through the ballroom with the formation instinct of a woman who understood that public diminishment was most effective when it could not be avoided. Eleanor saw her coming from 30 feet away and did not move. She stood where she was. She waited. Cecilia positioned herself with the instinct of someone who had been trained in this from birth. Close enough for the surrounding 8 or 10 people to witness the exchange, angled toward the light so that her own expression would be flattering and her target's reactions fully visible. Miss Voss. The brightness in her voice was very specific. I have been speaking with Lady Ashton. Eleanor waited. Lady Ashton mentioned that your household is in some difficulty. That your half-brother owes rather considerable sums to people growing impatient. The smile was small and precise. I thought it rather spirited of you, coming tonight in something so memorable. When one's circumstances are so uncertain, I suppose one must work with whatever one has. The women behind her maintained the careful blankness of people who have pre-agreed to witness something. Eleanor looked at Cecilia Hartwell for a long, still moment. She understood exactly what had happened. Cecilia had looked through her for 3 years. She had looked at her tonight because the gown had demanded it. And the first thing she had reached for was this, the small, available cruelty of a woman who had never needed any other weapon and had therefore never developed one. Eleanor understood her. More completely, perhaps, than Cecilia had ever been understood by anyone in this room. She said, Cecilia. The given name. Used without deference, without distance. The register of equals. Cecilia's brightness sharpened immediately. I have observed something across 3 seasons, Eleanor said quietly. You speak about other people's circumstances most readily when you are in company. Rarely alone. The audience is necessary. Which suggests that the certainty you wear in public is not quite as structural as it appears. She held Cecilia's gaze. I say this not to wound you. I say it because I am tired of no one in these rooms saying anything true. The silence in the immediate vicinity had a texture to it. Cecilia chose her weapon. You have no money, no family of consequence, and no prospects. You are wearing a dead woman's dress in a room that has forgotten you exist. My mother was not dead when she wore this dress, Eleanor said simply. She said nothing further. She did not need to. because a voice came from behind her. Quiet, unhurried, carrying with the complete ease of a man who had never needed to raise it to be heard. She is, in fact, rather more than that. She turned. The Duke of Blackmoor stood at the edge of the small radius of tension, and he was looking at Cecilia Hartwell with an expression that was not threatening. He was too controlled for anything as obvious as threat, but that had the quality of a very large, immovable thing that has decided to be present and is entirely at peace with the weight of its presence. Your Grace. Cecilia's voice changed immediately, completely. A lifetime of social training snapping into place with the speed of reflex. I had not realized you were nearby. I noticed, he said. The silence that followed did more work than further words could have. He looked then at Eleanor. His gaze moved across her with the same directness she had felt from across the room earlier. Specific, unhurried, without the performance of assessment. As though he was looking at something he had already decided to pay attention to and was now simply doing so, fully, without distraction. Miss Voss, he said. The fact that he knew her name registered as a small shock she did not allow to show. Your Grace, she replied and held his gaze. We have not been properly introduced. He said it without looking at Cecilia again, which was itself a complete dismissal. I should like to remedy that if you are agreeable. She looked at this man, powerful, controlled, unreadable in the ways that mattered most, and thought, I do not know what this is. I do not know what he wants. But I am not afraid of it. I am agreeable, she said. He offered his arm with the ease of a man who has decided what he intends to do and does it. She placed her hand on his arm and they moved away from Cecilia Hartwell, and the crowd, this crowd that had moved around Eleanor Voss for 3 years without registering her existence, parted. Actually parted. As if she had been the one they were parting for all along. He led her to the long windows overlooking the garden. Below, the October garden was very dark. Small lanterns along the path making amber points against the night. The contrast to the blazing room at their backs was stark and unexpectedly calming, and Eleanor breathed the cooler air near the glass and allowed herself one moment of simple stillness. Lady Margaret had positioned herself 12 feet away, the composed stance of a chaperone attending to her duties by remaining visible and to her friend's interests by remaining silent. Eleanor caught her eye briefly. Margaret gave the faintest nod. The Duke stood beside Eleanor and looked at the garden. You have attended Lady Hartwell's assemblies for 3 seasons, he said. Yes. I have been, a pause, occupied elsewhere. She waited. He did not elaborate. She noted this. He offered what he intended to offer and no more. An expectant silence, which unlocked most people reliably, found no purchase with him. You know my name, she said. I know a good deal about you, Miss Voss. She looked at him directly. That is a singular thing to say to a woman you have never met. Yes, he agreed. It is. And then something beneath his composure shifted. Not into warmth, not yet, but toward honesty. Your mother was a Hartley of Westmoreland. She went still. You knew my mother, she said. I knew of her. The Hartley and Ashford families share a long acquaintance. Mrs. Frances Hartley of Grayshill was, for many years, a particular friend of my grandmother's. A pause. She died 6 weeks ago. She was 91 years old, and she was, to the end, a woman of formidable clarity of mind. I learned of her death this evening, Eleanor said carefully. I know. His jaw tightened, very briefly, the only outward sign of something happening beneath his controlled surface. Mrs. Hartley was aware of your circumstances. She was troubled by them. She wrote to me twice, in her final year on the subject. She suspected that certain correspondence had not reached you through the channels it was intended to. The ballroom behind them continued its noise and music and bright momentum. She asked me to ensure you received what was yours, he said. I came tonight in part for that reason. I intended to find you if you were here, and to speak with you. She studied his profile. The line of his jaw, the controlled stillness of a man who had arranged himself into composure, and maintained it as a matter of long practice. Why would the Duke of Blackmoor take such trouble for a woman he had never met? She said. He was quiet for long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then, I have personal reasons to find such situations intolerable. A pause. I will tell you more of that tomorrow, if you will permit it. What I can tell you tonight is that there is more to your situation than Mr. Hargrove's documents have yet revealed. A complication of some significance that I have been investigating at Mrs. Hartley's request. I would like to call on you tomorrow morning and explain it properly. What kind of complication? She said. He looked at her, and what she saw in his expression was not evasion but the particular precision of a man who is deciding how much to say and choosing, deliberately, to say less rather than inadequately. The kind that changes things considerably, he said. I will not give you half an account in a ballroom and leave you to manage the rest on your own through the night. You deserve a full account. I am asking you to allow me until tomorrow morning to give it. She held his gaze. You are asking for patience. I am aware that patience has been asked of you at some cost, he said. It was such a specific thing to say. Such an exactly accurate thing to say. She looked at him and found, for a moment, that she could not produce a response to it. 10 o'clock, she said at last. 10 o'clock, he confirmed. Thank you, Miss Voss. He guided her back toward Lady Margaret then, returning her to her companion as propriety demanded the arm offered. The position maintained, nothing left open to comment by anyone in the room who might be watching, which was everyone. He was about to incline his head in farewell when his gaze moved very briefly, almost imperceptibly to a point across the room. Eleanor followed it. Oliver Hartley, standing against the far wall, watching them. The Duke looked at him for precisely 2 seconds. His expression did not change. Nothing about him changed, not his posture, not his jaw, not the controlled surface he presented to every room he entered. And yet something happened in those 2 seconds that Eleanor could not name but felt clearly. A communication. An acknowledgement between two men who were entirely aware of each other and had been for some time, and neither of whom intended the other to be unaware of it. Oliver Hartley looked away first. The Duke turned back and inclined his head. Miss Voss. Lady Sinclair. He acknowledged Margaret, which was correctly done, and then withdrew. The crowd took him back into itself. Margaret stepped immediately to Eleanor's side. He is calling tomorrow morning, Eleanor said before Margaret could speak. He is. Margaret stopped. He said that. He did. Eleanor. Margaret looked at her with the expression of a woman holding back a great deal. What did he say? What is happening? Who is he to you? I don't know yet, Eleanor said honestly. He says there is something I need to know. She watched the space in the crowd where he had been. I believe him. She waited until her stepmother's companions dispersed naturally 12 minutes and then she crossed the room. Agnes read something in her face immediately. Her own expression shifted. The solicitor. Yes, Eleanor said quietly. Walk with me. They moved to the far end of the room where the crowd was thinner and the music slightly more distant, and Eleanor told her stepmother, in a voice of perfect social composure, what Mr. Hargrove had said. The estate. The income. The 6 letters over 3 years that had not reached her. Agnes's face was remarkable to observe. It was the face of a woman whose calculations had been conducted privately for years and were now being read aloud by someone who should not have been able to read them. There is an explanation, she began. I am certain there is, Eleanor said. I do not wish to hear it here, in this room, where neither of us can trust our composure adequately. She held her stepmother's gaze. I will meet with Mr. Hargrove tomorrow and take whatever steps are necessary to establish my control of the Grayshill estate. Beyond that I will not pursue further action, provided Gerald's debts are settled by means that do not involve my estate. A pause. That is my only condition. Agnes stared at her. You have managed this household for 3 years, Eleanor said. I trusted that management to you because I had no choice. I have a choice now. She smoothed her gloves. I believe you understand me, Agnes. You are not a woman who misunderstands things when it matters to understand them. A silence. You are very composed, Agnes said at last. It was not a compliment. I have been practicing composure for 3 years, Eleanor said. Good night. She walked away. Her hands, beneath her gloves, were trembling very slightly. No one looking at her would have known it. The set was forming for a waltz when he appeared at her side. She had not heard him approach. One moment she was speaking with Lady Margaret. The next, the air had changed in the particular way it changed near him, and she turned and he was there. Miss Voss. He was looking at her steadily. "Would you do me the honor?" Margaret made a sound she immediately converted to a cough. Eleanor looked at the forming set. A waltz, the most observed dance in a room, requiring proximity, requiring his hand at her back, requiring two people to move together for a full 3 minutes in full view of everyone present. She understood what this would mean. He understood what it would mean. There was no innocence on either side of the asking. "You are aware," she said quietly, "of what this will signify?" "Entirely," he said. "I am asking regardless." She looked at him. She looked at the room. She thought of what she had decided at the beginning of this evening. To stop managing herself, to stop performing the version of herself that had failed her for 3 years, to be simply and fully what she was and allow the consequences. She had not expected the consequences to include this. "Then I will," she said. She took his hand. The effect was immediate and complete. She had calculated it, in the seconds between his offer and her acceptance, with the clarity of someone who had spent 3 seasons learning precisely how these rooms worked. The Duke of Blackmoor. 2 years absent. A woman in a crimson gown. His hand. Her hand. The two of them moving toward the dance floor. Every person in Lady Hartwell's ballroom was now performing the same 3 activities. Watching and thinking and recalculating. She kept her eyes forward. He danced with the ease of a man whose body had been well trained, and whose authority meant he never needed to think about whether he was doing it correctly. He led without appearing to lead. The light, certain pressure at her hand that said "I know where I am going" without requiring her to follow. She matched his rhythm without effort. They moved through the first figure in silence. She was aware of the room and aware more specifically of him, the composed attention he gave to everything, now given entirely to her. "You are wondering," he said quietly, during a figure that brought them close, "what this is?" "I am wondering several things," she said. "That one in particular." The figure separated them briefly. When it returned them, "I will tell you only this tonight, Miss Voss. I am not a man who does things by accident." "I had gathered that," she said. Something moved across his face. Not a smile, but the place where a smile would have been, had he allowed it. The music ended. He returned her to Lady Margaret. He bowed. She curtsied. He looked at her for one final moment with the quality of attention she had felt all evening. Direct, specific, entirely without social performance. Then he walked away through the crowd. The crowd parted as it always did. And behind him, people looked, not at the crowd parting, but at the woman in the crimson gown who remained where she stood and did not look away. They found quiet chairs in the music room, which opened off the ballroom and was largely empty at this hour. The chairs along the walls occupied by older women in conversation who had no interest in 2 young women sitting apart from them. Eleanor told Margaret everything. Oliver Hartley. Agnes. The Duke's promise of a full explanation tomorrow. The 6 letters and the 3 years and the complete truth of what those 3 years had actually been. Margaret listened without interrupting. When Eleanor finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Agnes knew from the first letter," she said. "Yes. She kept you in that market deliberately. In those pale dresses trying to be chosen." Margaret paused. "A woman who knows she has 1,200 a year and a house does not try to be chosen, Eleanor. She makes choices." Agnes understood that. "Yes. What she did is not merely unkind. It may be actionable." "I know. I will speak with Mr. Hargrove." Eleanor looked at her hands in her lap. The composure she had maintained all evening was not slipping. She would not allow it to slip, but it was present as composure now rather than as naturalness, and that difference was costing something. "I cannot recover the 3 years." "No," Margaret said simply. "You cannot." They sat with that for a moment. Margaret did not try to make it smaller than it was. This was why Eleanor had trusted her across 3 difficult seasons. She did not reach for comfort that wasn't true. Oliver Hartley, Margaret said at last. You think he is the complication the Duke mentioned. I think he is part of it. And the Duke himself. Margaret looked at her. Eleanor, the dance was not obligation. A man with his resources could have discharged any debt to Mrs. Hartley's memory without dancing with you in front of 200 witnesses. He chose to dance with you. She paused. I watched his face. He is not a man who reveals much. But he was attending to you in the way that men attend to things they have decided matter to them. He is a stranger to me, Eleanor said. He is a stranger who has known about you for months. Who came to a ball he has avoided for 2 years. Who stepped into a public confrontation on your behalf without being asked. And who arranged to come tomorrow morning and explain himself. A pause. He is not a comfortable kind of stranger. Eleanor looked at the far wall and thought about the waltz. The ease of him. The way he had said, I am not a man who does things by accident. The quality of his attention, which was the most specific and unperformed quality of attention she had ever been given. He said something by the window, she said. He said he had personal reasons to find my situation intolerable. He wouldn't explain tonight. Tomorrow, he said. Margaret looked at her steadily. Whatever the personal reason is, it shaped him toward this. Whatever it is, it made him someone who came to find you. She paused. I would not dismiss that before you understand it. I am not dismissing it, Eleanor said. I am holding it carefully. Until I understand it. Margaret nodded. That is all I ask. It was on the hall table when she arrived home. A cream envelope. Small. Her name written on the front in handwriting she did not yet know but recognized immediately as purposeful. The handwriting of a man who wrote as he did everything else, with precision and without hesitation. She sent the hall girl to bed. Then she stood alone in the entrance hall in her mother's crimson gown and opened it. Miss Voss. I am aware this evening contains several surprises, not all of them arranged by me, and that what I told you was incomplete. Incompleteness is its own kind of difficulty. I would not add to yours unnecessarily. What I have to tell you tomorrow concerns the Grays Hill estate but is not contained within it. 3 years ago, at Mrs. Hartley's specific request, I undertook to investigate a prior claim made against the larger Hartley estate, Vane Park in Yorkshire, which has been in legal suspension for 20 years. The claimant is a man named Oliver Hartley. I believe you may, by now, have encountered him. The claim was premised on the assertion that the Hartley bloodline had ended with your mother, and that you, if you existed, could not be satisfactorily documented. I can now document you thoroughly. Whether the claim can be defeated depends on several particulars which I will lay out for you tomorrow, fully and without omission, so that you may make whatever decisions are yours to make in full possession of the facts. I add one further thing. Not as pleasantry. I have found this evening that you respond to plain statement with more grace than most people manage in any register. And I would rather be plain than pleasant when plain is the more honest choice. Mrs. Hartley told me you had your mother's eyes and your father's conscience and more good sense than the world had credited you for. She hoped, she said, that someone would see it. I found this evening that I could not look away. B.A. She read it once. She stopped at the second paragraph and read it again from the beginning. Vane Park, Yorkshire. A prior claim. 20 years in legal suspension. A man named Oliver Hartley. She stood with that for a moment. She had not heard of Vane Park before tonight. She did not yet know what an estate in legal suspension meant in practical terms, or what a prior claim required to defeat, or what the difference was between a suspended claim and a settled one. She knew enough of how such things worked to understand that they were slow and expensive and required the kind of legal machinery that most people did not possess. She knew that 20 years was a very long time to maintain a claim, and that a man willing to maintain one for 20 years was a man who had reasons she had not yet been given. She thought about Oliver Hartley standing against the far wall of Lady Hartwell's ballroom with the stillness of a man who had done a great deal of waiting. She thought about Agnes's nod. She folded it carefully and stood in the entrance hall and breathed. She was not going to build a structure around that last sentence. She was not going to furnish it, or live in it, or let it become the thing she replayed through the night with the careful attention of someone who has very little to work with and must make it last. She knew what that was, and she had promised herself at the beginning of this evening to be done with it. She put the letter in her pocket, beside the inheritance document, and she climbed the stairs in her mother's crimson gown. She did not look in the mirror when she passed it. She already knew what she would see. She was awake before the household. She sat at the window of her small room and watched October light work its way across the London rooftops, black to blue-gray to a tentative cold gold, and she allowed herself simply to think. She thought about Gray's Hill House, which she had never seen. 400 acres of Westmoreland, hills and open sky, and the solitude of northern England, which was not really loneliness but something cleaner. She thought about walking that land as its owner. She thought about £1,200 per year and what that number meant. Not wealth but sufficiency. The irreplaceable, extraordinary freedom of sufficiency. She thought about Vane Park, which she had not known existed until tonight. A larger estate. An older claim. Oliver Hartley and his pleasantly watchful face. A legal situation that had been suspended for 20 years and might now, at last, be resolved. She thought about what the Duke had said by the window. I have personal reasons to find such situations intolerable. She did not know yet what those reasons were. She intended to know tomorrow. She intended to ask directly, without softening the question, because she had found tonight that she was better at direct questions than she had spent 3 years believing. She thought about the dance. She did not think about the letter. She put the letter in a separate part of her mind and let it sit there, neither dismissed nor examined, and she thought instead about what she knew of the man who had written it, what she had observed, the quality of his attention, the way he had navigated every exchange this evening, with precision, without waste, without a single unnecessary gesture, the way he had said things that were exactly accurate in a world where most people said things that were approximately pleasant. She had spent 3 years in rooms full of men who wanted her to be less than she was. She had made herself less. She had offered less and still received nothing. She had reduced herself by careful degrees until she was the social equivalent of a pale muslin gown, present, inoffensive, unremembered, and it had not served her and she was done with it. Whatever came next, she would meet it as herself. The hall girl knocked at 7. Eleanor called her in and poured her tea and sat in the window and drank it slowly. The clock reached 8. 9. Half past. She dressed without hurrying. A morning gown in deep blue, not the crimson which belonged to last night and always would, but nothing pale either. She arranged her hair simply. She looked in the mirror briefly and recognized the woman she saw and moved on. She came downstairs. Agnes had not yet appeared. Gerald was not home. The house held the particular quiet of a place where Eleanor was the only one present who was awake and attending to herself. At 5 minutes to 10, Mary appeared at the sitting-room door. There is a gentleman's carriage arrived, Miss Voss. His Grace the Duke of Blackmoor. Yes, Eleanor said. Please show him in, Mary, and remain within call. Yes, Miss Voss. The footstep in the entrance hall. The low exchange of voices. Then the sitting-room door opened and Edmund Ashford, Duke of Blackmoor, entered her house at precisely 10 o'clock. He carried a leather document case. His expression was composed in the same way it had been composed all evening. Held, careful, the face of a man for whom control was so long practiced it had become indistinguishable from character. He looked at her, and she looked at him. Two people who had been strangers 18 hours ago, in a modest sitting room in Bloomsbury on a cold October morning, the light through the window pale and clear and entirely indifferent to what was about to happen inside it. Good morning, Miss Voss, he said. Good morning, Your Grace, she said. Please sit down. He sat. He opened the document case. He looked at her with the quality of attention she had felt since the moment he had descended those entrance steps and found, across 200 people all working urgently to be seen, the one woman who had stopped trying. You said you would explain everything, she said. I will, he said. Then begin, she said. And he did. And outside, London continued. The carts and calls and accumulated noise of a city at the start of an ordinary day. Ordinary to everyone but the two people sitting across from each other in a small sitting room where, this morning, the Réal story was beginning. The woman who had spent 3 seasons being overlooked had stopped waiting. She had stopped trying to be visible for people who had decided not to look. She had worn her mother's crimson gown and stood in a room that had always had a place for her and had simply not told her so, and she had been herself, fully, without apology, without management, and the consequence had not been disaster. The consequence had been this: a morning, a man across from her, a document case open between them, the beginning of a full account. She had tried for 3 years to make herself acceptable. She had spent one evening as herself. It was, she would come to understand, the only evening that had ever mattered. And now, at last, she was ready.